I remember that camping trip like it was yesterday, even though it happened years ago. My friends and I had been planning it for months, and we were all so excited to get out into the woods and experience the great outdoors. We had everything we needed: tents, sleeping bags, a portable stove, and plenty of food and water. The first day was amazing. We hiked through the woods, set up camp by a small stream, and cooked up some tasty meals over the campfire. As night fell, we sat around the fire, telling ghost stories and laughing until our sides hurt. But as the night wore on, things started to feel off. The woods grew quieter, and the sounds that we had grown accustomed to, the rustling of leaves, the chirping of crickets, were replaced by an eerie silence. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was someone else nearby watching. My friends brushed off my concerns, telling me that I was just being paranoid. But as the night wore on, the feeling only grew stronger. I tried to fall asleep, but every time I closed my eyes, I felt like someone was watching us. And then I heard it. A low growling sound, coming from just beyond the edge of our campsite. It was a deep, guttural noise, unlike anything I'd ever heard before. My friends were still fast asleep, oblivious to the danger that had just lurked outside our tents. I lay there, practically frozen with fear, listening to the sounds grow louder and louder. I knew I had to wake my friends up to let them know what was going on, but I couldn't move. I was terrified that I'd make a sound and make the situation worse, and then something brushed up against the side of my tent. I felt the fabric ripple as something or someone pressed against it from the outside. I screamed, waking up my friends in a panic. "What's going on?" one of them asked, groggily rubbing the sleep from their eyes. "There's something out there," I cried, my voice shaking with fear. My friends sat up, their eyes wide with fear. We could all hear it now, the growling coming from just beyond our camp, like a few meters away. "We have to get out of here," I said, my heart thumping. We scrambled to pack up our things. My hands were shaking so much I just threw everything I could grab into my backpack. As we packed, the growling grew more frequent and more ferocious, and then something slammed into the side of my tent, knocking me over onto my back. I hit the ground hard, my head spinning. I screamed as we all took what we had and bolted out of the tent and through the woods, trying to put as much distance between us and whatever it was that had been stalking us. We didn't stop until we reached the safety of our cars, over a mile away from the campsite, and waited there till morning with the doors locked. The next morning we went back to collect our tents and gear. Mine was squashed half flat, with one of the fiberglass poles snapped, and a big rip in the outer sheet. I couldn't fully understand how I hadn't been injured. We packed up and got out of there as fast as we could. As we drove home, I felt so drained and tired from all the adrenaline. I was exhausted. We speculated about what could have been out there in the woods with us. A bear, a pack of wolves, or something else. I'll never know what we encountered in those woods, and maybe that's for the best. About 10 years ago now, I was on a solo hike through the forest a few miles from home. I had always heard that coyotes were shy animals that avoided humans whenever possible, so I never really gave them much concern. But as I walked down the deserted path that cut through the heart of the forest, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was tracking me, and there aren't that many other large wild animals in this area. At first I thought it was just my imagination playing tricks on me, but then I heard something moving, maybe the sounds of paws padding softly on the ground behind me. I turned around, but there was nothing there. Still, walking on, I had the same feeling niggling away at the back of my mind, and I quickened my pace, my heart starting to do the same. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the forest floor, and I knew I needed to find help soon. But as I walked, the sound of leaves rustling and twigs snapping grew louder and closer, until I knew for sure that there was something close. I broke into a run, but whatever was tracking me kept pace with ease, and I was sure I could hear their low snarls and heavy breaths, and I knew that if I didn't find safety soon, I'd be in serious trouble. Trying to focus on keeping it together and not panicking, I stumbled over a fallen tree trunk and went sprawling. My heart racing now as I braced myself for whatever it was to close in. I knew that I was in real danger. I tried to stand up, but my legs wouldn't obey me. I was paralysed with fear as something in the dark closed in. They were so close now that I could see their breath, puffing out of the dark in the cool night air. I kneeled and centred myself as best as I could, preparing for the worst. But then suddenly I heard a shotgun round, followed by silence as the round echoed out. I sat there on the ground, frozen, when I felt a hand on my shoulder and a voice asking if I was okay. I looked up to see a man, and beyond him a group hanging back and looking concerned. They helped me to my feet, and I stumbled back to their camp with them, my heart still racing. I've never been so grateful in my life. I don't know what I would have done, but I hadn't handled it very well up to that point. As we sat around the fire, drinking hot coffee, I realised I would never know just how close I had come to being attacked. But from then on, I've never walked alone in the forest again. I had been planning this camping trip for weeks. It was going to be the perfect escape from the hustle and bustle of city life. I packed everything I needed, including my tent, sleeping bag, and all the necessary supplies. As I set up camp in a secluded area of the forest, I felt a sense of peace and calm. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the trees. I built a fire and settled in for the night. But as the night went on, I started to feel off. I couldn't shake that horrible feeling of looming dread for some reason. Every time I turned my back on the forest, I felt a chill run down my spine. I tried to ignore it and focus on the beauty of the night sky. But as I lay in my tent, I heard footsteps outside. They were slow and deliberate, as if whoever was out there was trying not to be heard. I froze, too scared to move. I listened intently, hoping that it was just an animal passing by. But the footsteps continued, getting closer and closer to my tent. I reached for my flashlight, but my hands were shaking so badly that I could hardly hold it. I slowly unzipped the tent, peering out into the darkness. That's when I saw a flashlight beam, a few yards off in the distance. I felt a scream building in my throat, but I couldn't make a sound. I was paralysed with fear. The flashlight quickly turned off, and I heard the sound of footsteps moving away from my direction. But I knew it wasn't over. Whoever was out there still knew I was here. But what did they want? If they needed something, wouldn't they just introduce themselves, say hello, not creep around with a flashlight? I spent the rest of the night huddled in my tent, my heart racing with fear. Every now and then, I would hear a rustling in the bushes or a sound in the distance, and I knew that I wasn't alone. As soon as the sun rose, I emerged from my tent, exhausted and terrified. I packed up my things as quickly as possible, eager to leave this place behind. As I quickly walked back to my car, I still felt a presence behind me, the sound of twigs snapping and branches brushing. I turned around, but I saw nothing or nobody. I started to run, finally got to my car and sped off, not looking back until I was way down the road. As I was driving and trying to collect my thoughts, I knew that someone had been following me, but it seemed so random. It was the most strange and terrifying feeling, just knowing you're totally alone and fine, and then suddenly, potentially in danger. I've never been camping alone again after that experience. I think the not knowing who it was, or why they were lurking by my campsite is what truly freaked me out. The fear and terror that I felt that night were too much to risk going through again.